All I'm going to say is, the circus arrives without warning. Hello and welcome to my first book review. The first part of this video will not have spoilers, and then the second half will. So I will put timestamps below for when the spoilers start, and I will also put a warning on screen, so do not worry, this first half is completely spoiler free. This is my first book review, but I do plan on doing a series of them. I also sound a bit ill because I got a bit of a cold, so I apologise for that. I consume books, but I consume them kind of in periods of my life. So I go for a good while without reading at all, and then I can spend an entire day reading, and that generally tends to happen. So this won't be a consistent series at all. It will just be as and when I finish a book, I will pop a video up. With that said, let's jump in to The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book was highly rated on TikTok. It was on one of the bestseller lists on Waterstones. I don't know if it was an official list or just like algorithms, but that's what came up on my Waterstones as well. So I know I wanted to read it. It is a fantasy book about magic and an enemies to lovers trope. So bear that in mind if you want to read it. I find the writing amazing, but very different. So it took me a while to get into it. So in December of 2022, I started reading it. I read 3 chapters and I was kind of, I don't know if I'm going to get into this. I was going through a reading dip anyway, but I wasn't sure. So I left it, stewed on it for a bit, and then the day before yesterday, came back to it. And as you can tell, I've finished it. So, what can I say without spoilers? It's written marvellously. It's a very unique way of writing. I feel like Morgenstern's way is very different to what I'm used to with like YA fantasy or just general fantasy. It's quite, I don't know how to, it's quite elaborate. I don't know how else to put it. It's really cleverly written, and at first I wasn't sure about it, but the more I read it, I came to love it, and actually her writing style is now one that I love. Personally, I think the characters are very well developed. I think they're intriguing. I think not a lot is given away. I'm usually awful for guessing endings by like the first few chapters, and if I can do that, I lose interest in a book quite easily. I had a vague idea where this was going, but it still played out differently to what I thought in the best way. I just think it's a really cleverly written book, and one about magic that doesn't hit all the stereotypes, and the characters are wonderfully complicated, and really brilliant book, and I really do recommend it for anyone who is interested in fantasy, magic, or kind of just wants a book that might enlighten them to those things. I'll put it that way. I would put this book in the same category as The Midnight Library. I maybe would put it in the same category as Shadow and Bone for the way the characters are written in it. I read a lot of Neil Gaiman, and I wouldn't quite compare it to that. It's very different, and I think maybe that's why I struggle to get into it. The writing style is so different, but it's beautiful in its own way. I've not read much like this. I would say The Midnight Library is probably the closest thing I've read that matches with what this is about. It feels so personal to the reader. I felt like the story was written for me, and that I personally don't feel that with a lot of books, but I really did with this, and I think it's amazing quality. I'm gonna try and come up with some categories, and I'm gonna do it off the top of my head because that's how I life. Overall story, I would give a 9 out of 10. The ending is very open. I think it had to be, but I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Because I don't know how else I'd end it. I think it was ended brilliantly, but I was still a little bit like, did that end? Was that the end? But otherwise, storyline, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Characters, I would give a 9.5 out of 10. I think they could have been greyer, some of them, but I loved them all, and that's very rare. To have so many well-rounded characters, I think is really rare. Themes, I'd give a 10 out of 10. This is everything I love in a book. I love enemies to lovers. I love fantasy, magic, slight bit of humour, kind of fate and destiny and that sort of thing. I love. So absolutely 10 out of 10 for this book for me. Structure, layout, and decoration, I'm going to put in one thing. Beautiful. I'd say 9 out of 10. I got a little bit confused with the dates. If you are reading this for the first time, please make sure you pay attention to the dates. It's really important that are at every chapter. And I did get confused about that, but that is more of a personal thing. It's quite small and it's in italics, and I'm not going to lie, with a lot of the time with chapter titles, I kind of whiz past them because I'm like so ingrained in the story. Otherwise, without spoiling anything, because the actual illustrative qualities of it are beautiful. The font and the way it is formatted is just beautiful, and I very much enjoyed turning the page. I was ready to see the next thing. And in between chapters there are little, I'm going to call them verses, let's just say verses. Really beautiful. Make sure you read them. And yeah, so I'd give that a 10 out of 10. I love the black and the white and then the red, and I didn't realise the meaning behind it, and then once I did, it was just beautiful. Yeah, pay attention to everything in this book. That is what I will say. That's my top tip for this book. Pay attention to everything. So what would I rate it out of 10? Obviously I'm comparing it to my own personal library that I haven't explained to you yet, but I read a lot of Neil Gaiman, and I'm a diehard for Neil Gaiman. So I think I'm going to have to rate it, 9 out of 10, but you have to understand, for someone to compare with Neil Gaiman for me would be impressive. So 9 out of 10, that's a really good benchmark for my first ever review on here. Absolutely brilliant, and props, because this will now be one of my favourite books. Now we are going to go on to spoilers. This is only a small review, but beware, spoilers are coming. So I will put something up here to warn you all. Spoiler time for those who have read it, or those that don't mind spoilers. Oh my goodness, the characters. Can we take a moment to appreciate the characters in this book, please? So, bear with me because I still don't fully know how to pronounce half these names. I'm not good with pronunciation, so I apologise. Obviously, I'm in love with Marco and Celia. It is what it is. But why are all the characters so interesting? I want to meet every single one of them. The only one I perhaps never even remotely warmed to was Prospero, but I don't know if that's purposeful. So, wow. I love the characters. It's rare I'm massively taken by characters. I don't really know why. I I always tend to pick out the one. I think that's fairly normal, to be fair. I pick out one character in the book and I am just glued to them the whole time. In this book, I'm glued to all of them. I love Bailey's innocence and love, but the twins' kind of relationship with that and their cheekiness and their love for all things magic but thinking it's normal, and I can't kind of grasp one character who I'm like, oh my goodness, you're the best character. They're all so brilliantly unique, and the time that's gone into even the smaller characters throughout the book, I think, is very impressive. The description through the book, nothing like what most YA novels are like. It's so deep. I don't know how else to put it. It's so fruitful. It's so vivid. I could imagine all these impossible things so clearly thanks to her writing, and I love it. It stands for a lot of things I believe in anyway, and to read a book like this, especially with how it ends and the speech that we get from AH, I just it means a lot, actually. And I really feel like this book was written for us, for readers, and also for writers as well. Yeah, I've connected to a lot of books, and I know this is one that I've also connected to, and this is one I will be thinking about for a very long time, and I think will be in the back of my mind for a very, very long time. Go read it, people.